Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode on urban commons. So this episode of today is a joint venture between Cooperative City and the Gnyp platform. And we're very happy to have you here today in this moment of very, very challenging and interesting times that we're living. Fortunately, it's no longer Cooperative City in quarantine times, although we don't exclude that some of us might be slowly going into a semi-quarantine condition. Hopefully, though, the numbers of the pandemics hopefully will be reducing. We welcome you all. We would really like to know, where are you listening to us from, and sharing also some of the situations that you are living in today. So we have a very interesting panel with us today. We have together with our partners from the Gnyp project, Alessandra and Antonio, that we're very happy to welcome you all here. We have colleagues from the city of Paris, from Lublin, from Turin, and from Rome, who will be sharing with us also not only in general what are the policies towards supporting urban commons that are being developed in their cities and together with their local communities, but also sharing with us how can this be a way to really tackle the conditions that we're facing in now. We have seen already throughout the previous lockdown that a lot of the common initiatives were the first one to be able to provide food packages to families in need. We have seen that nowadays these are community hubs that are also supporting some of the challenges of riots that are happening in many of our cities. Just these days there was riots in Rome as well as especially in Turin. But also, how can these be spaces that are also ensuring democracy and social inclusion? And we have our colleagues from Poland who are actually on a strike today, who will be telling us more also about what is the situation. So, and we have also cities like the situation in Paris, where we see that unfortunately the pandemic is quite strong. So how are we seeing that these initiatives can also be a way to ensure also that we really don't leave anybody behind, which is something that we don't want to only say in words, but really carry out. So first of all, welcome to all. And this said, I would like to pass the word on to Alessandra and Antonio to tell us a little bit of a few words about also the Gnyp initiatives within this webinar is embedded.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you for this webinar that is very important for us for sharing the activities that are managing as Gnyp consortium. Gnyp Living Lab is a project started in 2019, and the aim of the project is to map, connect, understand how urban commons are changing the way of living, working in our neighborhoods in Europe. The project aims at identifying, if we can use this word, experiences organized by associations, community of persons, formal or informal groups of citizens, and on the other side, to understand the local initiatives that municipalities are implementing in terms of policies. During this first phase of the implementation of the project, we discovered that there are many solutions in Europe that are trying to understand how commons and solidarity can be implemented in the neighborhoods by taking care of urban spaces, creating initiatives for the welfare of the neighborhoods, and in many cases the solutions tested by municipalities are very different, but they share a lot of elements, as we will see later during this webinar. And so our idea is to understand what is happening and to support these initiatives also by identifying those points of weakness that we can in some sense change throughout our work by developing tools and other solutions for facilitating the rise of generative commons. We believe that generative commons can represent a very useful tool and solution for facing the social distance and for creating solidarity in a period that is very difficult, and during which the initiatives based and started from the needs of people are very, very essential to deal with this emergency. So generative commons are not something that is created for an extraordinary moment, but is a solution that is here to stay. And we want to use generative commons for imagining an alternative model for living in our cities, for producing, for creating social initiative. And we think that there are many examples and many practices to be shared. And with this project, with the map that we have created and that you can find online on our website, it's quite easy to identify all these experiences in Europe. The point is to connect them and to facilitate the exchange of solutions and practices in order to improve the life of the commons in Europe.
Thank you, Alessandra. So let's get really then into what is happening in the cities and having an overview of who are our speakers. So I would now do a round of introductions and asking everybody to briefly explain who you are and what is your connection to the Commons. So I would first start from our friends from Paris. So I would Sylvine and Louise, to introduce yourselves and explain what is your connection to the urban commons, why you're sitting with us at the table today. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you very much, and happy to be in this round. So we work for the Louise and myself. We work for the 27th region. We are a public innovation lab, sort of a think and do tank, who is experimenting with local governments, new ways of producing, of building public policies, more user-centric, more experimental, etc. So we work with design, with sociology, etc. And we work with about 40 French local governments who are all our members. So we don't respond to public procurement, but we build research and action programs. And we've been working since 12 years now. And 2 years ago, we have launched a project called Enacting the Commons. It's an Erasmus Plus supported program, and it allows us plus a group of French public agents to go explore across Europe how the commons have been changing public action. So we had observed that more and like commons was not a new word, of course, but more and more cities were developing new tools, new ways of working, new ways of interacting with citizens to support commons and to build new forms of governance. So the idea was really to go to Bologna, to Amsterdam, to Manchester, to about eight destinations. And the idea was also to bring back insights, inspirations for public French cities. And it was also an interesting time because we were just before the municipal elections. And in the last municipal elections, we have seen also a wave of new municipalities with commons in their programs. So it was also an interesting timing for us to organize this project.
Thanks a lot, Sylvine, for sharing this. I would ask now for Anna and Madga from Lublin to tell us a little bit about who you are and what is happening in Lublin.
So we are both working together in the municipality of Lublin for social participation office, and together we are doing our Urbact project community lab. So this is like a big experience for us, and we decided to work with neighborhood, which is very specific. It's in the center of Lublin. So this is very interesting work for us, just to make you to have an opportunity to use different kinds of tools that been used already in Lisbon, and it's working for these neighborhoods there. So we are trying to do more or less the same here on the spot here in Lublin.
And just to add a little bit of context, we both work in participation office, meaning we are in charge of inspiring, creating, channeling communication of the municipality with the residents of Lublin. And so the type of work we are doing within the community lab is quite new to our office and our spectrum, because it needs to really connect and combine all of the knowledge, all of the wisdom, both of social activists and municipal workers and other institutions and organizations. So this is an extremely important and interesting experience for us.
Thank you. So many of the cities that we came across are often involved in networks that are promoted, for example, from URBACT or from Urban Innovative Actions programs. And it's a very good opportunity, I think, for many cities to get in contact. So with the colleagues from Lublin, we're within this URBACT network of cities that is working on the BIPSIT tool promoted in Lisbon to tackle urban poverty. And it's very fascinating to see how the different contexts are, but the challenges are the same. And I believe you are on strike, you were telling us earlier today. So we want to hear also a few words more about that, if not now, later on in the session. So
absolutely, yes, we are on strike.
Very good, very good. So now we fly over to Italy, where we have two cities joining us. So we have Julian Colabello from Rome, where I am also speaking from. Hi, Julian.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Julian Colabello. I'm a councillor of the 14th district of Rome and a lawyer. I'm concerned about commons because I've worked on a lot of projects about agriculture or local markets during my work as a councillor. And in the last years, I started studying and acting inside the city about the general theme issue of the commons, because in Rome we have a lot of problems about using or directly ruling about how to use and put in disposal of people our commons, that in Rome are a lot actually, because Rome has enormous history and enormous dimension as a city. But actually today in Rome we don't have a specific regulation about commons, and a few weeks ago the city council did actually do not approve a proposal on this that was supported by 10,000 citizens, and that was a very bad passage for commons in Rome, because after this vote we still don't have a regulation. For example, in Turin, I think they have it, and also in Bologna or Venice or Palermo or Naples. It's a very important city for commons. So it's not an Italian issue, it's specifically a Roman issue. And also we have a new law from the Regione Lazio, the Lazio region, that is our main administration upon the city, that also this year did put in a law specifically to stimulate the cities, the municipalities to put in regulations on how do you access, for example, to a common.
So thanks, Julian, because this is a fantastic also transition also to hear from Gianni from the city of Turin, who have where there is a policy on urban commons. And Gianni, hi.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Gianni from the city of Torino. I'm an officer of the city of Turin. And yes, we in 2016 approved a regulation on urban common, following the example of the city of Bologna, actually. And between 2017 and 2020, we experimented with a project called Co-City, of which I am responsible, a project financed under the UIA, Urban Innovative Action Initiative. We experimented with the use of this new tool, the regulation on urban commons, and the new specific tool to, co-design and co-manage urban commons, which is called the Pact of Collaboration. The Pact of Collaboration is the juridical tool typically used in Italy in order to co-design and co-manage urban commons. There are also other examples with other tools, other procedures, other framework, other juridical framework around Italy, but I would say that the Pact of Collaboration is the most diffused one. And via this project, the Co-City project, as I said, we are experimenting in around 50 different places in the city, the renewal of abandoned building and the co-management of this building, the co-management of a significant number of open public spaces like small garden plots and this kind of thing, and also other there is also a specific focus on schools, on schools building, and especially schools open space, which are co-managed with association of citizens and parents and informal groups and the school administration, which is sometimes a municipal school, is sometimes a national school managed by the state.
Gianni, this is also already a transition into what would have been the next question. So I would also like at this point that you maybe directly follow up into this, that is actually, what are the main challenges that you are facing in developing these urban commons projects? Because it would be interesting, what are some of the main barriers that you're working on, and maybe to which also the commons regulation is of support, or maybe there are still some limits that you're encountering?
Very many challenges, of course. As always happens when you do new things, when you follow a new path. There's always been a number of challenges that are increasing in this period, as you can imagine. I would say that the first challenge is to establish a way in which you can cooperate, you can collaborate in the way you design a program that helps you to manage a public space. This is really a challenge because it's not taken for granted. I mean, both on the side of the public administration and on the side of citizens' organization, formal, informal, whatever, there are habits that are different. I mean, it's not that easy to begin to really cooperate when you design a way of managing public space. So that this is really, the challenge is really the way in which you can design something, changing your habits. I usually describe a project such as Co-City as a collective learning process. We are both learning something from each other and from the way we are trying to do. Because it's really, the challenge is really a shifting of mentality, both from the side of the public administration and from the side of the citizens organization. I mostly see it like this. And in this period, of course, all the difficulties are even radicalized by the difficulties to even meet each other or doing things. So, I mean, if I can see the things in positive, is that when you establish this kind of tool that works on mutual trust between people and between people and institution, this is a seed. I mean, that can help us to tackle the difficulties of this period.
Okay, thanks for sharing this, because I think this is probably something that is being shared by many of the cities around the table today and maybe listening to us. So to all of you listening to us, write comments, write where you're listening to us from, and also feel free to write questions and comments, because we will be sharing them with our speakers in the Q&A session in the end. And in the meantime, I would like to pass the word to Anna and Magda and ask, what are the challenges that you're facing in Lublin at the moment within developing the community hubs that you're supporting?
Well, I think the challenge is what every single community is facing right now, meaning how everything suddenly had to be transferred into a completely new path because of the COVID-19 pandemics. So this is obviously the biggest challenge of the now, like the most dominant issue that we are facing. But listening to the examples from Turin, for example, I think we in Poland, we are in a different stage when it comes to thinking about commons, urban commons. We are at the beginning of our journey and experience when it comes to this, and we have to acknowledge the experiences historically that we've had with what was common. What was common was considered something worse, something less important, something belonging to no one, and therefore nobody was in charge. And so this is the misconception and the stereotype that we have to first dismantle just a little bit. And I think what we have witnessed across the cities in Poland, not only in Lublin, is the outburst of thinking in such way from residents of the cities, which has to be followed by a reasonable, sensible policy from the city. And this is something that we are hoping to see in the near future, but it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet, and we are.
Go, Magda, sorry.
Yeah, please, I'll go. No, go, please.
No, I think, thanks, Anna, for highlighting this, because I think it's interesting how we see that it's not only something, how these processes are embedded in long traditions. I mean, Gianni was talking about the experience in Turin, which is coming from a work that has been carried out in the city through the past probably 30 years or so on. Probably it wasn't called as the Commons, but it's something that is part of a process. This is something very interesting that, for example, to some extent, probably post-socialist countries having communism, to some extent, have even a stronger tradition into community spaces, but the collective memory and association that is going towards this is so different, and there's so many different meanings that are associated to this, that it's very, very important to keep the diversity of this, as long as also maybe also using different names. We see that in certain contexts, sometimes talking about commons might not be the best way to really get the concept across. I would like to ask Julian from Rome about what are the challenges that you're facing in Rome, and you have a limited amount of time because I'm from Rome as well, and I can imagine that this would open a big window of commenting about many of the challenges that we're facing, but due to time, we're going to have to restrict to some of the main issues that are arising.
In one sentence, we have to reach what they did in Turin or Naples or other cities, Bologna, obviously, because it's the standard, minimum standard for Italian cities. And the incredible fact is that Rome is the capital, so it's the main city, the biggest actually in Italy. So the fact that we don't have a specific regulation on commons, not specifically on cultural or about environment or other situation, just in general, we don't have a reference today if we want to make up, for example, a project for using one specific common. And that it has this, I think, is the main problem. Also, an economic effect on the public real estate connected of the properties of the Comune di Roma, of the municipality, because when we want to put in a project, also a European project, or a simple city project, a building or whatever is in property of the Comune di Roma, we cannot do it on a track that is about commons. So, for example, with a lower loan or a lower amount of money to use it or to put it in disposal, but we have to apply rules as if we were inside a business action or a commercial action. So we cannot divide the common aspect and social aspect from the commercial or in general fiscal and or specific rules about the economic administration of the municipality. And this is the first and highest wall that we have between the actually life in Rome and projects on commons and what is the actual regulation. So to have this specific but not so incredible special regulation, but something as they have in Turin or Naples, is actually the first step, the first thing we need. Then we have a lot of specific problems because Rome is Rome, has a lot of cultural commons, a lot of specific buildings or situations that we have to study and to put inside project. But without this first level of regulation, we are actually stuck and we cannot move on this aspect.
I think, Julian, is very interesting what you're saying, because one of the situations, I'm curious to see whether this is something that is happening also in some of the other cities that are present here or that are listening to us. One of the issues that we're facing in Rome is that during the pandemics, a lot of the common initiatives were fundamental in bringing packages to families in need, way quicker than the administration was able to do. But now most of these community hubs, therefore, they got, big thank yous from the politicians for having been so, socially committed and so on. But at the same time, these are initiatives that are under eviction. They're usually in spaces of the public administration, not always, they do not want to pay rent, or anyway, not on a commercial rent, because they are initiatives that don't have commercial activities, but it's unclear what would be their sustainability in order to be able to pay the rent, or if they don't pay the rent, then how are they able to anyway have that minimal economical income to at least run the activities that are, because you still need some resources, and that automatically falls under a commercial activity. So some of these issues, this is what has been a big effort, and this is why we have also so many lawyers today with us who are very unusual lawyers with guitars like Julian and Maradona as Alessandra and Antonio behind them. But this is fundamental because this giving a policy framework, and this is exactly what within the Gnyp project and the colleagues from the law department of the University of Turin are actually working on. And this brings me then towards Sylvine and Louise to tell us a little bit, what is the framework in Paris? What is happening at the moment? What are the challenges that you're seeing in terms of community common spaces in this moment in Paris? Big question, I can imagine, also because the situation is quite complex and diverse, but can you give us a little bit of a glimpse?
Yeah, thank you. So just to open up a little bit, I would like to talk to you about an example in Grenoble, which is not Paris, but south of France, which we are working at the moment. And yesterday we just worked on a specific project that is called Embedded Lawyers. And this project allows us to investigate 9 projects of generative commons and we call it third places. And actually, when you were saying sometimes some words are more useful than others to work on commons, in France, third places is a concept, is a word that helps us a lot to open up the subject and work with the local governments on this subject, because it's an object that is quite identified. And behind this third place, there is communities of people working on different kind of projects. And sometimes it's urban commons, as we know it, in a more agricultural project. Sometimes it's more social project and economical project taking place in third places. And so during this project that is called the Embedded Lawyers, we've seen something in Grenoble, which is quite interesting. I wanted to share it with you. Is that the city is thinking about provided vacant places for emergency accommodation, and it's very actual because we have this pandemic situation and COVID situation. And during the first episodes in the spring, many collective, many people build a project that helps people being build emergency accommodation project at the needed places, and the city helps this collective, this group of people, with providing vacant spaces. And actually, during this, they've pointed out many questions about how to secure places, how to formulate mutual agreements, mutual engagement on managing these places. But moreover, they built a way to define a frame on social policy, common-age social policy, because they identified the fact that the local government couldn't couldn't manage this emergency accommodation problem on its own. So they really worked with the community. And at the moment, they're thinking about how, with this vacant places, we can really work on common-aging social policies.
Maybe to complete with what Louise is saying on levers and breaks for commons, I think this topic of vocabulary is very important. In France, we have we use more and more with our community the word of governance and more open governance, and it allows various local governments to, and also various type of public agents to enter in this topic from a perspective that is for them more precise, that is less connected with citizen action, and that is also an open door for local governance. So I think this topic of governance is of vocabulary is very important. And also another thing that we find important is to find the right entry point for this topic of governance or commons. Going across Europe, we have seen a great variety of situation. In Bologna, the entry point is more from the topic of public space. But for example, in Manchester, it's really much more from the topic of economic governance, for instance. How do we think of the local development as a commons? In Scotland, the topic comes more from the topic of the land property. And so in each local government, it's a matter of right entry point of the culture, of the administrative culture, and also the posture and the narrative for elected representatives. That is very important.
Thanks a lot for sharing these insights. I think also thanks to all of you, because it has been really raising some of the issues that we've been mapping within also the Gnyp project together with Alessandra, Antonio, and the other partners from around Europe about really what are the main barriers. And I think the cultural barriers you've mentioned, in terms of names, in terms of really understanding, but also in terms of also cultural maturity, a little bit what also, for example, Madga and Anna were talking about, so that some of these concepts now are a bit newer in Poland, although probably you have a very long heritage that somehow has been also is not in the revamp at the moment, maybe in some contexts. But at the same time, there also what also Julian also was highlighting is actually how are these initiatives inserted within the market, within, and also just as our French friends and Gianni was saying also, what is actually then the role of governance and policy within this? So I think thanks a lot, because this has been raising quite some of the issues. So as a spoiler, I can already say that this is probably something that Antonio and Alessandra can then later feedback on, also the work that is being done in terms of policy mapping and briefing, which can be shared and improved also thanks to your input. I would like to have another round with you that is actually looking a bit more. Now we've highlighted some of the issues that are a bit more of the problems, but especially in these times of being frightened, I think a lot of people are being a bit scared now. The virus in certain contexts is more and more close. We're getting maybe even, friends and family that are saying that, they have to be in quarantine because they might be, have been in contact with contagious. There's a rising economic social crisis with riots happening in many of our cities. We're facing a crisis, and we're facing fear. And so my invitation to all of us now is let's try to give a little bit of hope as well. We have mapped the problems, but let's try to figure out also together, what are the solutions? Are there some solutions that we have found or that we are trying to work on at the moment? And maybe we still have to test what is the impact, but we think that this is the way forward. And with this, I would like to ask Anna and Magda to share, because I think you have been doing and you haven't been telling us many details. So I would ask you to give us a little bit more details about what you're doing in the city center of Lublin. We will also put in the chat also some of the links, maybe to also have a bit of an idea, but maybe not all of you have been to Lublin. I have, and I can say I was very, very fascinated to discover a beautiful city center with a very strong character, which has not been yet gentrified, unlike most of the city centers in Europe. And you are doing a fantastic work in trying to really preserve and foster community hubs in the city center. So could you share a little bit with us? What do you think is the way forward towards this? And don't be shy.
So yeah, like the place that we, yeah, can you hear me? Yes. So the place that we are working on, it's in the center, as you said, and it's getting more changes, because there's like new we have people who work there, who live there for the very long time, and we have new places coming in, like new buildings, new hotels. So this gentrification is coming out all the time during the time that we are doing the project. So this is a big change. But if we talk about the situation right now and COVID and all the pandemic situation, and our work with the people on the spot, it's very complicated, because our plans are getting changed all the time. And can you hear me, guys? Because you froze.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So we need to change the plans that we are doing every time. Like, for example, we would like to invite our people from the street to the walk of about surroundings. So it happened at the beginning of October, but last weekend we couldn't do it again because we cannot meet. So just to make a quick reaction, what is going on, we decided to do this online walk. So this is like our answer for what is going on, like on the spot right now.
But also, I think what's important, as much as we are doing our best to engage the local community in whatever that we offer them, but also to have them come up with their initiatives and what is important for them in the local environment. We have been doing a lot of mapping. We have been doing a lot of research to actually understand all of the complexities of the area. But the fact of the matter is that the situation has changed so much, and quite a few times already, that whatever our idea is has to change all the time, constantly evolve. And right now in Poland in general, and we cannot escape this, we are in a moment of a bigger fight and war to fight. Not only the epidemics, but the fundamental human rights and democracy is at stake. So that makes all of the work at the bottom that much more difficult, because usually in times like this, you put initiatives of this sort a little bit aside. But to make it a bit more positive, I must say, and I very strongly believe this is the history of Poland in general, that we thrive in crisis, and the more difficult it gets, the better the solutions come with time and effort. And so we have seen an incredible initiatives, bottom-up initiatives of helping people in times of COVID. So I'm sure together with our efforts, you know, we can hopefully see something extremely positive very soon.
Well, you're not alone in this. We're all together in this. So we're supporting your strike right now. So, and we appreciate also that on your strike you are with us today at lunchtime with sharing the experience.
Yeah, thank you. But what I want to add, it's the thing that people are really good in organize themselves right now, and like the part of they feel so much solidarity. Not only I'm talking about the protests now, but it's a big change between helping from this second wave of the COVID. Right now, it's a very fast reaction. What if somebody needs some help? People have support, for example, restaurants. They support medic people. So it's very it's changing, and it's good to see. And Polish people are fighters, so we won't stop, never, I think. Yeah. So cross your fingers.
Thanks a lot for sharing this. These insights, and it's so important that we really make sure that when we're having these discussions about commons, about community spaces and so on, this is not only fluffy bourgeois, very hippie insights, but it's actually a way to really ensure democracy and cohesion in our territories. And this is absolutely fundamental, especially because of what we're facing. Because even though Poland is facing it very harsh, the issues for which you are striking at the moment are at stake in many countries, and not only in post-socialist countries, but also many countries throughout Europe and the world are facing many of these issues. So this is why we're all on it together. With this, I would transition then also to our French friends, and I would ask Sylvine and Louise to tell us a little bit about what is the hope that you see ahead of the work that you are doing.
Yeah, thank you. We during the first period of the pandemic, we have launched an investigation with about 15 local governments, but with a wider community, of what changes have been accelerated with the pandemic. And we've seen indeed that many cities have experimented ways of working that are very much commons alike. Even though they don't call it this way. For example, new ways of teaming up with citizens in producing masks, in delivering food, etc. But also ways of putting resources and human resources at the service, at the disposal of local organizations. So it means public agents going to work within community centers, within citizen groups, etc., organizing citizen groups that are sort of a citizen stock, citizen reserve to mobilize in terms of urgency, but also developing new ways of sharing resources between various local governments. So in many ways and in many ways of interacting, there has been a development of new ways of working, and we are working with some of the cities to see how to sustain these ways of working on a longer term. So I will post, we have written an article with several paths and several scenarios of new ways of working for local governance. And we can tell that already, for example, Nantes is implementing like the experiments they had from the pandemic on a longer term perspective.
Thanks, Sylvine. Thanks a lot. I would ask Julian, what is the hope ahead now?
Actually, also in Rome, we have some problems in these days about the pandemic situation in all Italy, where there is protests and manifestations about this release. And actually, commons can be one of the keys to look to look to the future with hope. But we need a specific policy intervention about this, because using commons also to a social purpose is one of the main things that we can do. Also, trying to interpret the concept of commons in a wider way possible. For example, there is all the situation about the public houses, and we have like 20,000 citizens in Rome that they don't have a house actually, and are not in stable situations, and obviously with the crisis that is coming on the pandemic situation, it will be worse and worse. So we start from what I said, the main basic regulation about commons, but we have enormous challenges in front of us in a social perspective. I will not say socialist, because but that's my political point of view, but it's not the issue today. But from a social perspective, absolutely, because it's not sufficient what we did until today. I think in Rome, but in general, in all Europe, all the European approach about economic and social problems is not correct in this situation, and developing a wider concept and theory of commons, so houses and work, for example, labor, is one of the ways I think is the principal political challenge we have in front of us. Starting from Rome obviously that is a very big city and reflects a lot of the problems that we have in Italy and Europe.
Transitions us now then. What about Turin, Gianni? Because Turin is considered one of the best practices in terms of commons, with your fantastic houses of the neighborhoods that we all envy, and a very strong history in really developing urban regeneration community hubs throughout the city. What do you think is now, from your perspective, the hope of what we have to do in the next period?
Yes, as you said before, we are now using the notion of commons, the notion of Pact of Collaboration, but actually, as you clearly said before, in Turin is the case of a legacy of a tradition of cooperation between the city administration and local subject in Turin, as in many other Italian cities. There's a tradition of urban regeneration, of projects and cooperation between different subjects, and I think that's the key. I don't think that seeing the challenge of the pandemics from the urban commons perspective give us some specific insight. In this very moment, I'm here in my office. In this very moment online, there's a meeting with some other citizen organization in order to how to cope with safety requirement related to the COVID emergency and to do things in public space, and how you, can do something and you can't do some other thing. But you have this kind, exactly. You have this kind of situation in very different cases, if you're talking about urban commons, or if you're talking about other more traditional way in which public services and social activity are managed. Also during the lockdown, all the examples of people of helping people in needs during the lockdown and so on and so forth in the city of Turin has been the result of top-down initiative of the city and bottom-up initiative of the neighborhood houses of other social organizations. So I think that there isn't a specificity, but as I said before, I think that cooperation is key, in the sense that when you have this kind of challenge, I think that if you have tools and if you have the possibility to engage the organization of civil society to work with the public administration, there's a field there's a space of work in which you can cope with this kind of issue much more easily than if you do it spontaneously on the one side or state organized from the other side. So I think that's the key. I don't mean to. You talking about riots in this? I don't want to pretend that conflicts doesn't exist now and before the pandemic and after. The conflicts in the city are, in a way, the soul of the city. So you don't have to pretend it doesn't exist. But I think that from the public administration point of view, the way to, the tools to engage, to cooperate with the civil society is the key to cope with these challenges.
Thanks, Gianni. No, thanks a lot for sharing this. We want to give, as you highlighted, we don't want to hide the fact that there are conflicts, and we don't want to hide the fact that we are in a very, very complex situation. But we also need to look forward also to something positive, because I think fear is going to risk of limiting even more some of the civic rights and some of the liberties that we also have. So this is how to ensure also the collective interest within this is fundamental. I would say that in the best of traditions, we are running a few minutes late. So I would ask our speakers and our audience to maybe be with us another 15 minutes, I would say, to be able to have a feedback from Antonio and Alessandra in terms of the work that is being done from the GECO policy brief work, and getting also to some of the questions that we receive from the audience. I apologize if we're already in advance if we won't be able to answer them all. But this was a lunch break, and otherwise we risk of making it already a sort of pre-dinner or something. So we don't want to keep our guests for too long to what we had originally agreed upon. So Alessandra and Antonio, from your perspective on the work that is being done towards giving some support on policy regulations throughout Europe within the GECO project, can you give us a little bit of insights based on this discussion? And yes, how can we further support our friends in the work that they're doing?
Yes, thank you very much, Daniela. I think that it is very useful for us to wrap up and try to wrap up what has been said until now, because with the GECO project, one of the advantages we can bring to the table is the fact that we can have an overall idea of both the main issues and some kind of possible solutions that we can get at the European scale. What we did in the project is, in fact, among other things, a big survey in which more than 50 experiences of urban commons have been interviewed and tested. Of course, among these experiences, we can account both communities and public initiatives. And in this second group of experiences, we're going to talk about today with you. So under the perspective of which kind of common lacks of difficulties we have found with respect to public policies, we can basically highlight three main aspects. The first point is a matter of responsibility. So namely, many public institutions which are willing to carry out or promote commons initiatives find themselves locked into the paradox of keeping the responsibility for what happens into the good. And somehow this could be problematic in terms of letting people use the good without a control from the public with a common and co-management. The other issue which could be highlighted is the issue of, let's say, the social impact of these initiatives. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of public administrations which doesn't know how to use a good, and such public administration which have, of course, different options. Normally, the legal systems would somehow put incentives on the most profitable use of the good, which normally would be a market use. This means that many times the law requires public administrations to take profit out of the good, and somehow this would make it difficult for public administrations to devote goods to commons initiatives, because, of course, under a pure economic perspective, under a return of income perspective, they are less profitable. Of course, what we have found that many times, although these initiatives, so commons initiative, would be less profitable, on the other hand, they would have a bigger social impact with respect, of course, of the value they can bring to the community. And so in this sense, we found out that what could help public initiatives in promoting urban commons, it would be kind of a methodology allowing the measurement of social impact for such experiences. This really leads us to the third and last point, which is the issue of cooperation. Public institutions, usually in the use of their goods, are bound to public procurements, which is a legal tool which is based on competition. And of course, this tool is very incompatible with urban commons, which are mostly based on cooperation, and in which the idea of several groups competing to each other to acquire the use and management of goods is really something which doesn't fit. In the end, what are we trying to do to overcome these and other lacks we have found out? First of all, we have written a policy brief, namely let's say a brief in which we resume all the issues and potential solutions we had found in our inquiry, and we suggest to the European Union some policies which could be implemented from European institutions at the European level as well as at the municipal level. In fact, we strongly believe that the municipal level is the best level to implement urban policy initiatives, but on the other hand, it's also true that the framework in which these policy initiatives and these local regulation move, it is a European regulation, it is a European legal framework, which can do, the two frameworks need to cooperate and talk to each other. That's why, and what are the other solutions which public administrations can use? One has already been mentioned, are the regulation for urban commons, which have been mentioned already many times during our talks. And maybe in the round of question and answers, we can say something about it. And at the GECO project, we're trying to implement soft tools such as a toolkit we will upload on our platform, a toolkit which can help public administrations, but also commons initiative, namely a group of people who want to implement a common, to help them with respect to legal issues they may face, to the use of temporary uses, and even to other aspects, such as to build up their governance mechanisms and to implement citizens' participations. All these tools that we will implement in our platform will be freely available and will be, of course, built up upon and on the and all the results we had found out during our inquiry, which involves more than 55 experiences, and a database which involves more than 255 experiences around Europe. Thank you.
Thanks, Antonio, Alessandra, because this is really, it's really useful. So then we're posting in the meantime also the links in the chat, I believe, and also our guests here will be able to share this. Now, in the meantime, we received some interesting questions and comments from our audience, and I would like to share some of them with you. So we get Marcis Rubenis, who, and probably the pronunciation is totally wrong, so sorry about that, Marcis, who asks us, how are changes? I would read to you in the meantime 3 questions and do a round of comments. They are diverse questions and you can answer on what you pick up on, so that we give the possibility to who wrote to us comments and questions to slowly get also some feedback. So Marcis was asking, how are changes in the property market, crisis, no crisis, influencing availability of space for social economy commons in your cities? And this is, I think, a very interesting question also related to what Julian was also mentioning in the meantime. So this is one of the first question. Second one was from Pablo Reis Costa, was saying, great conversation. Thanks a lot for this. So congrats to all our speakers. And he's asking, in your opinion, what is the role of the temporary uses in those challenges that you are facing for developing urban commons? And I think this is an interesting point also that we take from the GECO, because one of the focuses will also be on temporary uses. And I know many of you are also working on that. And in the meantime, as a block of the third question from Jorge, who is asking, are there any commons, buildings or public spaces that have been adapted or reactivated during the months of lockdown to provide social welfare services? So have you seen an increase from the policy from the public point of view of increase of the commons availability as a result exactly of the pandemics? So this said, it's a free round. So I don't know who of you would like to give a feedback first on this, on these questions and comments from the audience. Don't be shy. Anna, I would like to have your feedback on this.
When it comes to the availability of spaces, I think this is a tremendously important issue. And in Lublin, we've been struggling with this actually, because the city property for years, and the property that is left needs to undergo major renovation to actually be able to be used, meaning that for many social initiatives this poses a lot of problems. In many cases they are not able to fund the renovation required to be able to use the spaces. And so there are many ways of working around this issue, and of course many of them are being used, but there is no one systemic method to overcome this problem. There are increasingly appearing initiatives of merging public and private funding when it comes to initiatives like this. But this is also a very delicate and very difficult issue here. So yeah, I'm not going to take up the entire time. Oh, and when it comes to use of the public spaces for the initiatives that emerged during the COVID, well, yes, of course, we have obviously, we had to set up new hospitals, field hospitals, and make room for people in quarantine. So yes, of course, this is the case. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks a lot. So I would ask maybe if our French friends, if Sylvine and Louise would like to give some feedback based on the questions from the audience.
Yeah, in France, we have also seen this this topic of public spaces or public buildings being used, for example, for NGOs or citizen groups to cook for people in need and migrants, etc. What we, as a 27th region, we are interested to observe in the future how this will impact also the design of future public buildings. Can we design public buildings that can be used for multiple use with a more open governance, etc. So for us, it would be interesting that the public stakeholders have a longer term perspective on this topic of shared uses.
Thanks a lot, Sylvine. Thank you. And don't be shy, Gianni, Julian. Anyone else would like to further comment? Please don't force me to throw you in.
Can we say something about temporary uses and the use of commons during the pandemic? So with respect to temporary uses, we in the GECO project, we are actually building up a tool for the use of temporary uses in implementing urban commons. Actually, if the question, if I recall well, was about the use of temporary uses in implementation of urban commons, the experience we can report from our survey is that they are very much used around Europe, although there is no a general agreement upon what we're talking about. So there are some kind of agreement that we need to do something which building, which are in a development phase, in a phase of development, and they don't have to remain unused. And there are several projects which are trying to deal with that, and they're very interesting. So I would, yes, I would say that there's a general trend in Europe to use this tool for implementing urban commons. And on the other hand, with respect to the urban commons and the pandemic, what we really found out, you have to consider that we did the interviews of the survey during the first lockdown, that now we should call the first lockdown, waiting for the second one. During our first lockdown last spring, we did all the interviews. We were supposed to do them in person, so flying to different places and undergo to interviews, which we didn't do, of course. Interviewing people through online, we found out that many of those experiences have converted themselves into something different, which was basically structures or projects to help people in need due to the pandemic, which could be most of the time shelter for people who did not have a place to go for lockdown, or distributing food. And we're talking about maybe places who in their everyday activity were cultural places or social hubs, which could not work as such because of the lockdown, but they converted themselves into something else, which, because of what has been stated before, and I'm wrapping up now, really have shown how urban commons can make cities way more resilient towards shocks than we can do towards normal mechanisms of the market and the state, which were completely inadequate to answer those issues. And the first network in cities which had the power to do that were actually urban commons, which in 2 days, 3 days, 10 days, put some kind of protection for the weakest, while normal structures took months and nowadays are still not ready.
Thanks, Antonio. I think you're raising some of the issues. I think we're slowly heading towards the closing, also not to take up too much of our speakers' time. But I would like some words first from Gianni, because I can see that we really raised something that he really needs to feedback on. So absolutely yes. And also from all the others, if there's any last closing words that you would like to do. And I think we're going to arrange another session soon about this, because I think there's a lot of interest in the discussion. So Gianni, go ahead.
Now, just a small thing about this fact that some building has been translated in other spaces, a cultural center in a place to distribute food and so on and so forth. That's what's happening. Buildings change temporarily their functions. Another important thing, I guess, I'm an architect, sorry about that. The point is that we realize that some open spaces that have air, have an important resource in periods like this. A place that we are now managing a place, a public place with a roof, but without windows. And that's a resource in this period. So I think also that in this period we learn the importance of open public spaces and the importance of how can I say, how to specially organize things in the open spaces more than usually.
Thanks. I think that's a very relevant issue also about the role of the open spaces, especially because of what is facing us ahead if they don't block us back at home. So I don't know if anybody else, maybe Julian, or maybe would you like to share any other, do you have any other pressing comments that you would like to share in the closing?
Well, there was the question of masses. I hope that I pronounced that correctly. Rubenis, that was about the issue I was putting on before in Rome, and I like also the question about the comments about the conflicts that exist. Actually, is the main problem, and a great fan of the conflict theory. So I follow a lot this reasoning about the question that was put on from masses. Well, the fact is, I can speak about Rome, that I said that we have like 20,000 people, citizens, without a house or not, without no service from public housing. On the other side, we have like 200,000 houses, private property houses, mainly of society, of companies, big companies, obviously, that are not used in Rome. They're not rents, they're not sold, they're not you don't have anyone living in them. So this is a huge example of the conflict that we have. That is also because the reason why was saying that the theory of commons needs to be the wider possible, because if you don't get inside this type of conflict or main paradox, if you want to call them like this, you cannot understand exactly, because people need common places. Obviously, we are talking about buildings. This is a very specific issue, obviously, but mainly because you have this increasing demands of common social properties and shared places, obviously. And this, with the pandemic crisis, will be only a way to make it more evident to the public discussion. So I will, it was a very good question, so I thought it was necessary to reply. Thank you.
My dears, I would love to stay continuing, and I can see that also Gianni before got really enthusiastic that he had to give feedback, and I think that we're all very committed to this discussion. So I would say that I think that with Alessandra and Antonio and the other partners from GECO and from the side of Cooperative City, the magazine on collaborative urban practices, we would be very happy to organize a new discussion. So whether with you or whether you have also other city friends from your countries or others that you would like to share this insights, we're looking forward to this. So I think we'll discuss this further. We can say that you will be receiving anyway further information about the GECO project in the coming weeks. You are very welcome all to join us for the next episode that will be always at lunchtime on the 12th of November, that we'll be talking about cultural heritage and how can community hubs be regenerated through new economic and governance mechanisms, which is, as you can see, very much related to the discussion that we had today. So we'll be focusing more on the financial instruments that are behind some of these community initiatives. So please join us also in 2 weeks' time. And in the meantime, I would like to give a huge thank you to everybody. So definitely to my friends and colleagues from Eutropian and Cooperative Cities. A big thank you to Alessandra and Antonio, partners in GECO, and all the partnership. But a huge thank you to our speakers. Thank you very much. And to our audience from today. I hope you had a very nice lunch break and will be energetic for the afternoon session. And we're looking forward to the next sessions together. So thanks a lot for joining us today. Have a nice lunch break and we can go off for a coffee later on. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Daniela.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.